Hey guys, my name is Mitsumiao, and welcome to an episode of Monday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I'll give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you'd like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question today comes from Brandon, and it is, do you agree with Macy J that Thatcher should get a rework? Nerf the radius of Thatcher's EMP, give him maybe 5 in total, but also allow him to cook it, to counter elevated Cade claws. So, to no one's surprise, I think that Macy is onto something here. Right now, Thatcher is probably one of the easiest characters to play in Siege right now because he requires no thought whatsoever. You come across a gadget that you want to take out, be it electrified wall or just something that's behind a doorway, you throw his EMP at least somewhat in the vicinity, and it's going to get the job done. The result of this, and especially considering that we've been getting more and more gadgets every single season, Thatcher has become one of the strongest operators in the game for this very reason. And so by reducing the size of the AoE on his EMP, that is then going to require a little bit more nuance when you play as him, not allowing him to essentially have an I win button against all of these gadgets. And so at least in that respect, I think that Macy's onto something here. With that said though, I do have a couple concerns with this kind of a rework. Right now, defense is already really strong, and admittedly, this would probably make them even stronger. If you're playing with a bunch of randoms, it can already be really difficult to get through a reinforced wall, and now by nerfing Thatcher, one of the best ways to get through those walls is now going to even be more challenging. If you are reducing the area of effect so that it's going to be difficult for you to be able to take out a Cade that's placed it properly, that means you've reduced it pretty significantly. So you're going to have to be pretty precise with this thing. And so Thatcher is now having to not only cook the EMP so that it lands and goes off exactly where you want it to, but you're now having to guess where that Cade Electroclaw is. That's going to put a lot of burden on offense to be able to line everything up to get on through that reinforcement. That could be quite challenging. Now, one thing that is worth considering is that eventually Ubisoft is going to be adding in the Ping 2.0 system. This means that if you're using your drone, you will effectively be able to ping the exact location of any gadget that you come across, and that information obviously is going to relay to your teammates. And so you can ping that Cade Electroclaw, and now Thatcher knows exactly where he needs to place it. And so maybe this wouldn't be as bad once that system is introduced. On top of that, considering that he now has access to 5 of them, at least with Macy's suggestion, that means that even if he does miss a couple of them, he still has a lot to fall back on, and so maybe that wouldn't really be as bad as well. Honestly, what I would like to see done is to have more alternatives to Thatcher. Right now, a lot of weight is put on his shoulders because, admittedly, he is the best at doing what he does. We have a couple alternatives like Twitch and Kali, but if we really get down to it, they're nowhere near as effective. And while some of this is going to be remedied in this upcoming update because Kali is getting a pretty big buff. Not only is her primary weapon going to be a lot more versatile, but she's also going to have access to a better secondary, allowing her to excel in close encounter situations. Not as well as other characters, but she's not going to feel like she's at such a disadvantage. And so hopefully this will finally make her a more viable option, and you're going to be able to bring her as an alternative. But I think we need more than that. And while I know that's going to be very difficult, it's going to be very challenging for Ubisoft to introduce something that is different from the ones that we have, I do think that there's something that they need to focus on because of just the vast amount of gadgets that offense needs to deal with. In general, though, I think that Macy is onto something here. Thatcher is getting constantly sidelined at the beginning of ranked matches because people are finally realizing how powerful he is, and so to increase his skill ceiling and make him a bit more nuanced may be a perfect way at balancing him out. I would love for Ubisoft to try, or at least experiment with these kinds of changes. The next question comes from Sam, and it is, what do you think about an MMR system where you lose/gain more or less MMR depending on how convincingly your team won or lost? So this is an idea that I've heard bounced around fairly regularly, and I can understand why people like this idea. If your team wins handedly 4-0, you should be rewarded for such a success. You should get a lot more MMR and ELO so you can rise through the ranks faster. This could also act as an incentive to keep people invested in a match even if they're losing. If you're down 0-3, some people may just check out, shrug their shoulders and be like, whatever, I'm gonna play another game after this. I don't care about this one anymore. You know, it's clear clear that we're not going to win. But if you're going to lose a significant amount of elo, or at least compared to what you normally would have with the previous system, you now have a bit more of an incentive to stay in that match and try to win till the very end. Now, where we start to run into some issues with this, though, is when we look a little bit closer. Right now, the current system in Siege is you play on either offense or defense for 3 rounds, and then you switch sides. Some maps are incredibly offensive or defensive favored. Outback is a great example. If you're on defense, you're probably going to at least win 2 or 3 of your matches, almost guaranteed, as long as you know what you're doing. And so let's say you were offense that round, you get 3-0'd at the very beginning, you switch sides, and then for whatever reason, your team got unlucky, or they kind of rushed the objective, you weren't expecting it, and now you just got 4-0'd. It wasn't necessarily because your team was worse. I mean, you could argue that you should have won that defensive round because you had the advantage, but things happen. Now, you're gonna lose a significant amount of elo because of this system. On top of that, because of the matchmaking system, every so often, you might be going against a team that is just simply a higher skill level. Let's say all of them are Plat 3, your team is around Gold 2 or Gold 1, but because it was trying to find you a match relatively quickly, it didn't want to keep you in the matchmaking queue for 5-10 minutes, it paired you up with this other team, you are now going to be at an inherent disadvantage, at least skill level. And so if you just get rolled that round 4-0'd, if you're now then going to lose even more elo, that also isn't going to feel fair. And so I understand why people like this idea. It seems like it would have a lot of benefits. When we look a little bit closer at map balance and just the matchmaking system in general, I think that it would cause more problems than it would solve, but that is just my opinion. The next question comes from Corey, and it is, how about an offensive operator who can mimic other operator audio? He can simulate the audio of a Fuze or breaching, going off, Thatcher nade, Ying, Candela, etc. This would be audio only. He can cycle through and choose what to mimic with only 2 or 3 shots to use. A lot of people over the years have suggested adding in a new operator that is able to use sound to their advantage. Either the sound of footsteps so that it appears that someone is running down a hallway, or like what you suggested, literally just making the audio of other gadgets in the game to throw off defense. Admittedly, Yana already fulfills this role. If you use her gadget to run down a hallway, it's going to sound like someone is running by, and then if you then deactivate her gadget and flank from a different angle, that could throw off those defenders and they may not expect that kind of a flank. Like, that's really cool when you're able to pull it off. But admittedly, it's very difficult. And so if there was something in the game like what you suggested, that could be a great distraction. The big issue that I have with this, though, is that more often than not, it would just simply be better to play as those other operators that you just described and not just make the audio, but literally have a Candela going off into the room, or have the breaching so that you can literally get through that soft wall. Making audio is great, but it's only gonna go so far. Now, who knows? Maybe this would be way better than I'm making it out to be. If you had a lot of these audio devices, you could throw them all over the place, and now it's gonna be very difficult for defense to really know what's happening. Are they pushing from that angle? I can't hear footsteps anymore because it sounds like a Ying and a breaching is happening like directly next to me. And that could allow offense to sneak in or catch them by surprise. And so all in all, while on paper I really like this idea, I think that if Ubisoft ever does decide to add or introduce a character along these lines, they're gonna have to be very creative if this operator is gonna see any play whatsoever. The next question comes from Owen, and it is, what do you think about a Fuze buff where his gadgets are now throwable? He could throw them onto a soft ceiling and they would go upwards, or do you think this would be overpowered? It could be countered by making the process louder or take longer. I really like this idea. We've talked about a lot before that Fuze is probably one of the less versatile operators in the game because he relies on a soft surface, and many objectives just simply don't have them because either the window got taken out or because every single wall is reinforced. And so if you were able to literally go below some of these objectives and just throw his gadget up and then start to take out people that are directly above you, or at least force them to move away, that could be a gigantic upgrade and would make him way more versatile. I honestly can't think of really any negative that would come with this kind of a change. It would still be Fuze, he would still be the same character, but you would allow him to use his gadget in just more locations. What's not to like? Like, some objectives might become a bit more difficult to defend, but once people start to understand what to look out for, Fuze is still having to get into the building. He's gonna have to be below the objective so roamers can still take him down, but at least it would give him more options to use his gadget. That really is the biggest drawback of playing as his character right now, because half the time the only thing that he really brings is his primary weapon, because his gadget just doesn't see any use whatsoever. And so, yep, I love this concept, and I would love for Ubisoft to at least consider it in an upcoming change. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Monday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. Do you think that Thatcher could use a rework like this? Why or why not? How would you go about it? Give me your guys' thoughts down below. As always, if you'd like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until next time, guys, have a good one and take it easy.